Hi, it's Leslie again, ready to share with you a little bit from Nehemiah 5. I'm not going to read very much of it because I'm really just going to focus on one verse. But the gist of the beginning of Nehemiah 5 is that it comes to Nehemiah's attention that the nobles and officials are not treating the other Jews fairly in Jerusalem. In fact, they're selling them into slavery. They are exacting debts from them that they can't pay, and they know this. And so Nehemiah basically comes to them and rebukes them for the way they're treating the others in the household of God. And in verse 9, he says, "The thing that you are doing is not good. Ought you not to walk in the fear of our God to prevent the taunts of the nations, our enemies?" And so basically the question here is, how are you supposed to be a great city and a kingdom that glorifies God when you can't even treat each other well? How are we supposed to represent God to the other nations, our enemies, when all they see is us selling our own brothers and sisters into slavery, not treating each other fairly and well? The other nations are going to taunt us if we don't get it together and walk in the fear of God. So what does this mean for us? What is our calling in this as a believers? It's pretty much the same. Paul says in Galatians 6, 9, and 10, I'm going to paraphrase, that we'll reap a harvest of blessing if we do good, and we need to take every opportunity to do good, especially, he says, to those in the household of God. Why is that? Well, Jesus says in John 13, 34 and 35, "Just as I have loved you, you are to love one another. By this, all people will know you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." And then the writer of Hebrews tells us in Hebrews 10:25 to encourage each other, to spur one another on to love and good works, all the more as you see the day approaching. So what are some takeaways for us there? Well, we need to be in community. We need to be a part of the church, of God's kingdom here now. We have to be willing to encourage others to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which they've been called. That's also in one of Paul's letters in Ephesians. Sometimes that's going to look like just being encouraging, praying for each other, for healing spiritually and physically and emotionally. That's going to be willing to give to everyone who has need, give to the church, give to missions, be a part of taking care of the household of God. That's sometimes, though, going to look like speaking the truth in love, maybe going to someone for conflict resolution. Maybe you are harboring bitterness or judgment against someone else, and you need to go to them and speak the truth in love and confess. We need to be willing not only to take criticism and rebuke, but to be willing to give it. It goes both ways. Being willing to take criticism and to take someone calling out our sin, and then being willing to also take the log out of our own eye before we go to someone else and bring something to their attention that we believe could be a pattern of sin or something they've been in the wrong, some way they've been in the wrong. It's about being willing to take care of the purity and the peace of the church. The purity, we don't want any sin. We don't even want anything to be named among the household of God that is of darkness and not light. But we also want to pursue the peace of the church, to be forgiving, to be gracious, to be encouraging, to be loving, to love as Christ loves us. When the nations see a people who treat each other from all walks of life, backgrounds, races, when they see people who treat each other with love, dignity, forgiveness, and grace, they see God glorified, and they see a picture of God's kingdom and what is coming for those in the household of God. We must walk in the fear of God, and in that we must walk in love towards the people of God. You can't love Jesus and not love the church. You can't love Jesus and hold bitterness against your brothers and sisters in Christ. You can't love Jesus but judge people for the way they dress at church. You can't love Jesus, but then gossip about other people in the church. If you love Jesus, you'll love his church. I'm going to close with Ephesians 4, 1 through 3. It says, I, therefore, this is Paul talking, I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Thanks.